Welcome to the Motivation Insiders podcast, where we explore best practices for designing, implementing, and measuring incentive, recognition, and loyalty programs. We look at motivation with an exclusive view, from the inside. This is an ongoing podcast designed and produced by the IESP, the Incentive Engagement Solutions Providers of the Incentive Marketing Association. I'm Lincoln Smith, board member of the IESP and CEO of Motiforce. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, welcome to the Motivation Insiders podcast, a podcast run by the Incentive and Engagement Solution Providers. My name is Vince Chiafolo, president of the IESP, board member of the Incentive Marketing Association, and I lead partnerships and business development at Flemr. So as you may know, I know we talked about it on last podcasts, this year on Motivation Insiders, we've actually been running a little bit of a new format. So instead of one standing host on each episode, there's rotating hosts of the board members of IESP. So you'll see a different host pretty much on every single episode. And what that has done is a lot of great things. It's opened up more topics, more perspectives, and best of all, more frequent episodes that we've been putting out. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying that, but welcome your feedback. And with that, I'll be your host for today's episode, and I'm joined here by Paul Flemr, Senior Vice President of Incentive Marketing Solutions at Group O. Paul, thanks for joining.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so for today's topic, incentive strategy is really being rethought right now across the board. Rewards, rebates, and incentive programs particularly, so it's great timing to be sitting with Paul. The reshaping is not just chasing of different trends. It's really driven by some strong fundamentals that we're seeing across the board in the industry. Things like participants' expectations that are going up.
For sure.
People wanting and seeing digital experiences, instant gratification, the fraud landscape is changing, AI is coming to play and starting to be applied more in different ways. And I think overall brands are demanding more accountability and standards are going up and proof points are higher and higher in demand. So with much of that shift, at the same time, comes a lot of opportunity, right, in our space in how programs are built, evolving, making sure they deliver value and who benefits them. So Group O, really great opportunity to have them on the podcast. They're right on the forefront of this conversation. First of all, they're an esteemed member of the IESP and the IMA, and they've been putting out some really solid content this year on the industry for 2026 incentive marketing. Which covers really all of these shifts and more. There's definitely not enough time reasonably in the podcast today to cover all of these shifts, but I'm looking forward to digging into some of them. But before we do, Paul, would love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, more about Group O and some of the research you guys have been doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, the SVP of Operations here for the Incentive Marketing Division of Group O, but Group O is a much larger organization. It's a business process outsourcer that's been in business now just over 50 years, privately held, and was established back in 1974 with, believe it or not, packaging capabilities, which we still maintain today, as well as a very large supply chain organization. So we like to tout end-to-end solutions, and certainly when you tie those two divisions in with our Incentive Marketing Division, we truly have those capabilities. I'm most proud of being a part of incentive marketing now for almost 20 years here at Group O, and spent close to 15 years prior to that in the call center operational space. So I've taken that customer care element and all of my key learnings there into this honorable place where I'm at today, working with a fantastic team of folks that support the needs of our clients, their customers, and the excitement within the incentive marketing space is huge right now. And as you mentioned and introduced, the idea around changes that have occurred, that this is a really pivotal point in time in this space. We've looked at 2026 as a really key year based on some of the things we saw evolving over the last several, really since the pandemic. That shift to more digital, that shift out of the retail environments and more online, of course, had an impact. But what we're trying to do and sharing some of the insights we have now at Group O and the experiences we've had is really to ensure that all of us that are incentive marketers in this space understand how we maintain our level of credibility with the brands that we support and with their customers and keep our businesses relevant. And I think identifying what you just talked about, the speed and looking at things that customers are demanding or that the companies themselves are, it's about bringing about engagement and loyalty up front in our solutions to really ensure that those touch points with customers are more meaningful and longer lasting, and ultimately making sure it's done securely and safely so that customers' rewards, incentives, payments are protected. And that has to no longer be an afterthought. We'll get into that, I'm sure, more in this conversation, but fraud deterrence and mitigation is one of the most critical elements of solution delivery for incentive marketers like us and like many of our competitors. And so sharing the insights around those topics is really critical for us, as I said, for credibility purposes. We're looking at it as a series of articles that really build out an executive playbook that really can give guidance to those that are trying to improve upon and bring about a more dynamic set of solutions to their prospects and clients. Because again, I think we all benefit from that. So sharing some best practices is always good. We learn from that and then take it to market and continue keeping this space very relevant for all of us. So we keep our jobs if for nothing else.
Love it. Yeah, I think in our conversations when we're talking about 2026, we're describing the big shift, right? How things are meaningfully changing this year, even more so than we've seen in the past. We see change every year, but now it's multifaceted. And I think you're touching on a lot of the fundamental drivers. Ultimately, a lot of those things stem from the end user participation in the program, right? Their experiences trickle up to, in the form of feedback to those that are running and hosting the programs, and then those trickle up to the platforms that are powering those programs. And then that creates these trends and shifts that we talk about and figure out how to accomplish those things. And it's not a single thread. It's really multi-threaded in some of the things that you talked about today. But are you saying that too, that it's driven by the program experience and what the users are experiencing? And I'll add to that, there's standards that I think they have for programs, but a lot of those standards are being influenced by experiences that they have outside of programs and in everyday applications, social media, apps that they use that, set the bar on a lot of the trends that you talked about in your opening statements.
That's exactly right. It's now table stakes that the experience they have in going through the incentive or promotional side of things matches what that original experience might have been in purchasing a product or signing up for a service or subscription. If there's a reward or incentive, a promotion built around that activity and those behaviors, they want that seamlessness of experience that matches it in terms of ease and speed and ultimately delivery or fulfillment of the reward that was promised. And that demand is loud and clear, not only from the brands that we work with, but from the customers themselves. And those little hiccups aren't as forgiving any longer. You need to be responsive to that and have ways of helping those customers through and guiding them through the process if they do find any friction along the way. And keeping it frictionless has become one of those primary objectives, and it's how we sell our services these days. I think all of us in the space understand that you have to tout the ease of not only the experience, but the delivery of the rewards and ultimately that customer satisfaction from all of that.
Yeah, and frictionless, that's the term that just keeps on coming up, especially this year in different forms. But it's really that. I think a lot of it is influenced by consumer experiences elsewhere. And just giving an example from today, I thought about this as I was doing a checkout experience for some tickets to the auto show in New York for my family.
Sure.
Card on file and card provisioning, right? If I have to go check out, when I'm buying a pair of shoes or tickets or anything else and go run and fish for a credit card and type in the numbers, that's now impacting the experience, and it could impact my loyalty, my relationship with the brand. And that really wasn't the case a few years ago. It was just standard that you type in your card number every time. But now if it's saved and it's saved in a secure way, that is really helping my relationship, my likelihood to use that brand. And so it's a perfect example of how that's shifting. It may take a different form in loyalty programs, but that same frictionless and ease of use is there, and it could really make or break, loyalty, engagement, retention, repeat use, all of those things that we all care about.
You got it. And again, it's done up front now. So the customer's first impression comes from that experience. So whether it's buying tickets to a show or buying a product that you're going to use ongoing within your home or buying services for your family, you want that initial experience to match then what your expectations are of that brand moving forward. Or if you come back to that brand again for future purchases, that initial engagement you've had and that experience is going to stick with you. And again, it's what customers demand, and you hear from them if it doesn't deliver what they're expecting. I mean, even those small inconveniences you talked about, like having to type in a card number, and there's less care or concern up front from them about it being secure. They just expect that you have the environment that provides that. So they're going to rely on that, and they're not likely to make a different choice the next time if they don't have the experience they expect.
So what are those specific, hiccups or friction points in your world, like related specifically to an incentive program that might be paying a reward or incentive for, a sale made, or a rebate program where I might be earning a refund or an appeasement payment from an airline or a hotel? What are the common points of friction that people are seeing right now in those types of payment flows?
Well, let's talk about rebate programs because they are traditionally, they're high volume, high velocity. There are a lot of people participating in them. And depending on the brand you're working with, there are a lot of expectations and objectives that need to be met. And that ease and that experience nowadays has to be of the utmost of consideration. So the friction typically in the past has been, well, I'm going to have to provide some level of proof of purchase, an invoice, a receipt of some kind that may have to be uploaded or even mailed in directly. There's forms that I may have to fill out online. They want intuitive platforms and technology that do some of the work for them. They want automation that can review those documents and ensure quickly that validation of either identity or eligibility is completed so that they can go to the next step of ultimately claiming and receiving their reward. Especially when there's cash involved, a payment to a customer, it's really critical that all of those elements I just described are something that the customer can ease themselves through without having to pause or look for help or call in for assistance. So you need a platform that can deliver that. And again, do it securely and safely with those guardrails in place that catch some of the fraudulent activity or the bad actors that may be trying to infiltrate those environments. Those are typically areas that I know most of us in the space have been focused on for several years. But the delivery of that up front now isn't, again, a conversation. It's an expectation. So your solution that you're presenting has to showcase that. And we've done a lot of that here at Grupo, where we've enhanced the environments, the platforms we're using for customers that engage with us for rebates. We're implementing AI-driven technology that does the review of the documents. It goes beyond the old OCR technology, that optical character recognition. It's now intelligent document processing technology that's built in and integrated within those platforms to help automate that part of it and push that customer into the next step, which is ultimately claiming their reward and having the payment delivered. So those are some examples, and there's certainly others.
Yeah, and I'm glad you use rebate programs as the example. They're probably in our world talked about a little bit less, right, than loyalty programs and recognition and incentive programs. And in this case, they're so relevant because you really got one shot when it comes to program experience. They tend to be more transactional, where in a loyalty program or a sales engagement program, there's more long-term use. There's a lot of at-bats to be able to provide a good experience or make up for a bad one. But when you're dealing with a refund or an appeasement payment, you really have one flow. It's one shot. And if it's bad, then that's how they think of it. So yeah, it's interesting. And folks may think the opposite, right? Because it's just that one point of the relationship, but it means that one point has to really be perfect because you got that one shot, right, to do it well and create that good experience.
Exactly. I mentioned earlier that some of that integration of loyalty and engagement is occurring in some of these more traditional rebate and even sales incentive or acquisition programs where it is a one and done. What we're finding is the expectations can set the tone for the customer, and it also sets it for the companies we're working with. We've established long-standing relationships, decades on, in some cases, with some of our clients, and it started with a program that might have been a one and done payment to a customer, and then they begin to realize our capabilities include the opportunity to bring us sales channel programs, loyalty programs and platforms, employee-based programs. So once they see that you can hit it out of the park on one, they're likely to bring you additional business. So one of the key elements we like to emphasize in our insights is grow those relationships by proving your merits, proving yourself in that one opportunity that you've been given. If it happens to be a program that has a one and done, don't take it for granted. Make sure that experience is as elite and premier as it can be to match what you would do in the case of a loyalty solution or something along those lines.
Yeah, and I think the why is very important too. And my hope is that, brands correlate as much as we do the payment experience to loyalty and repeat purchase behavior and things tied directly to revenue.
Yeah.
Just to toss out, a stat that I pulled up for this particular bit, CX Dive did a stat where 48% of consumers say that they'll spend more and have more loyalty to a brand when the payment process is fast and frictionless,
Yeah.
as opposed to not. And when you think about it, it makes total sense. I gave the example before about making a payment. You can imagine how the reverse is also true when a company is giving a payment, right? Standing in between somebody and their funds that they're owed, there's no better way to lose trust and then subsequently lose loyalty. So it's not surprising. My hope is always that brands also see that correlation. Are you seeing that they do, or are they starting to see that more in your experience?
Absolutely. And it absolutely ties us as incentive marketers more directly into their overall marketing efforts to not only acquire, but retain and build loyalty with customers. And so that payment process needs to be seamless. It's why end-to-end solutions are in our book are touted as kind of the go-to, because we can almost guarantee end-to-end that customer is going to be cared for through all of the notifications and post-sale communications along with the fulfillment of the payment. And if anything does go off track at any point, there have to be solutions that include immediacy of contact and support to that customer to get them back where they need to be, and then expedite that payment if necessary to get them what was promised. And so brands are beginning to see that. They're asking questions around that when we first propose how we're going to support or what our technology can do to take the customer through that process and ultimately deliver the dollars, in essence, that are promised. And the sensitivity to it is high. They understand the criticality of keeping it secure, meaning the brands. They understand that you have to build in safeguards. Oftentimes, depending on the program, it may be very appropriate to ask for additional identification, confirmation of eligibility, and there may even be time frames in which customers need to have services in place before they're eligible. All of that said, at the end of the day, if the payment is promised in a certain time frame, it has to be delivered with consideration for all those other things being invisible to them and behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's full scale program experience is I think the what's top of mind now, where historically in your case more payee experience or reward recipient experience was more you check the box if they got paid what they were owed, and then they can use
Yeah.
that payment. If it's a gift card, it works at the store. If it's an open loop card, they can use it wherever the networks accept it. Great. Right now, that's advanced to the entire end-to-end experience from the point of, earn to spend. Right. And there's a lot
Right.
of steps to your point in between that not everybody may realize of, running through identity verification and KYC. And there's other, steps to ensure that they're getting their funds. They have optionality of what they can use those funds or how they can push those funds, where they can use them.
Right.
And going through that whole thing, it's more of an end-to-end experience, and it is just, what form of payment it is. So, yeah, I'm glad you're touching
Yeah.
on all of the different parts because that's where the friction lives in any of those steps along the way that may go south. Um,
Yeah.
and, part of that is also speed, right? Reducing friction, part of the purpose is making it fast. If it's frictionless and there's hoops, but also if it takes a really long time to get, funds that are earned or owed, that certainly hurts the experience. And again, coming off the comments before, people are shaped by things that they use that are real time, payment oriented, Venmo or Uber or other examples that are just, it's just in time. There's no delay. And again, it creates
Right.
expectations for the side of what we do in incentive rebate loyalty. So digital wallets being used more is really important. Things where speed is important. So is that something that you're hearing too, or are you guys indexing on speed of that whole process that folks have to go through in addition to eliminating the friction points?
Absolutely. Yeah. That speed in delivering is critical, and it's demanded, and in many cases it's needed, because if you look at the transaction that occurred, or the interaction that occurred that earned them that set of dollars, it's imperative that we're able to match the objective of the brand and making sure that customer is paid quickly. So you talked earlier about the digital transformation and transition that we've all made. This is a part of it. Instituting digital payments was critical years ago, and now the speed of those being delivered, doing those verifications and other things as quickly as possible up front through automation and technology, so that ultimately the customer sees that money arriving, whether it be in a digital card registration email, directly to their phone, and then being able to push the funds, having flexibility to move funds in other directions if they choose to. We talked about choice up front being a demand of customers. Choice in how they use the payment is another part of that. And so we've adapted our solutions for that, which also keeps it very exciting in this space, right? For all of us, it's kind of fun to think about. We're not doing all of the traditional things we used to do. We can step outside of that and solve for things now that are the demands of the market and of the consumers. Consumers have gotten very savvy about things. So where they have the money delivered and then how they can use it is a part of their thinking when they're considering your brand, your services, your product. They're comparing that to what others in the marketplace offer. So we need to make sure as incentive marketers that our solutions match those types of objectives.
You also mentioned security, and fraud and compliance a couple of times, which is, I feel like we don't cover enough, the content within the IMA community. And I think we'll be doing more because it's become, a hot button topic, and there's more fraud than there's ever been. And in our world, on the program side, there's multiple different flavors of fraud, unfortunately, right? So there's fraud in the flavor of, business fraud, AML risk of, folks leveraging these systems for the wrong purposes, like money laundering.
Right.
And then there's fraud that can affect the cardholder and risk funds that are maybe on a card or a payment product. And, as program managers, there's got to be solutions in place to, not just react to those things. Yes, that, but also prevent them. And it sounds like some of the solutions you're talking about are in place to do just that. Is that the trend you're seeing? Is people are worrying about fraud more, and how are you guys responding to that?
Yeah, again, we're talking table stakes now. The brands ask for that immediately. What are you doing to deter, to mitigate, to eliminate fraud? In days gone by, years gone by, it was one of those things that was kind of kept hush-hush. You didn't talk a lot about it. And even in larger scale, high velocity programs, sometimes it was seen as a bit of a cost of doing business. Now fraud is going to cost you the business. So it's really critical that you look at it upfront, embed it in the technology solutions. That's what we've done. Layer in various ways that we can identify that we're dealing with the right person, that they've submitted documents that have not been falsified. All of that can be done through a combination of technology, AI tools, as well as that human element that still needs to be inserted at times. But ultimately, it has to be done with speed and precision so the delivery is not sacrificed and you're getting things out the door as quickly as you've promised to those customers. There are appropriate times to slow the process down, but you have to now be transparent about that and make sure customers and the brands understand why. It may be related to the amount of money that's going out or to the type of reward that's in play, or the program requirements. So those business rules need to be really honed in and sharpened to the point that, again, the technology matches ultimately the objectives and end results that are required. But fraud has to be talked about. It has to be sold as a part of the solution, that you have the right deterrence in place. And then most importantly, we feel at Grupo, it's critical to work with your supply chain of financial partners, whether it's the funding banks, the processors, and the card providers, to ensure that they've layered in all those downstream pieces that help at the merchant level, detecting whether there are fraudulent activities happening. We have to all remember, as much as we're innovating and using technology, embracing AI, the criminals out there are doing the same thing, and they're more than keeping pace. They're likely a half a step ahead. So it's really critical that we push our solutions forward, continue adapting, continue researching and testing against what we feel the attacks might be.
Yeah, like they say, where there's money, there's fraud, and in our world, it's more than that. There's multiple different steps that have fraud risk of different variety. So yeah, I mean, in the AML component of verifying a business and their identity and that they're legitimate, that may capture 99%, but then there's maybe 1%, right? Now, how do you identify that? Well, maybe there's,
Right.
you mentioned before, assistance of AI and things like risk detection and identification of patterns. And even that can get missed because of things getting
Hmm.
more sophisticated. So what are the manual checks? And so, it's really not a one-threaded strategy. There's really, to your point, a multifaceted overall system, right, to employ to really
Yep.
make sure that at all these different levels where there can be fraud, there's also
Yep.
controls to be able to identify it and react to it and be proactive to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to have the focus. You've got to have dedicated resources that do it. As much as we like to tout the fun and excitement of this incentive marketing space, fraud and compliance are a huge part of it that need to go along with it. And those are just necessary parts of our job to learn and then apply and provide clients with the most secure solutions possible.
Yeah, and just to take it back to experience, right? Because it really all sits on the same foundation of that. A really good example of a bad user experience is, I got my rebate or my reward and it was really smooth and frictionless, and I went to use it and the funds were gone. So it all
Yeah.
kind of plays into,
Yikes.
making sure that, the participants are having the best experience throughout that whole process from, the
Right.
steps that are required to earn, to redeem, to get, and then to spend,
Yep.
with confidence and with no, unpleasant surprises. So it makes a lot of sense. There's also, a human layer to this as we talk more and more about, different controls and systems and especially AI. What we're finding is the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way a little bit to talk more about,
Hmm.
well, AI makes sense and automation makes sense, but there is a human layer and a human element involved in it that still needs to be involved. You can't automate away everything. So I
Right.
think what everybody's trying to figure out is where's that sweet spot, where it's not necessarily fully automated, but it's perhaps AI assisted, human touch points, especially when it comes to customer service and things that are cardholder or program participant facing. And I know
Yep.
there's some subject matter and some of the research that you all put out relevant
Yeah.
to this, right? Human touch. So yeah, what's your take on that? Where does it make sense for the human layer to still live, and where that matters?
I'm glad you brought up this topic, and it fits perfectly for me, especially. I can put back on my customer care and call center hat from decades ago to date myself, but it's always been a critical element of any service provision that you give to a customer or to any audience that's participating in the incentive programs that we all service and execute. And I think it's part of setting those business rules up front so that the brands understand that there is someone to fall back on. There is a human being there that can insert themselves into the process. So you think about all the different scenarios a customer might go through, from upfront submission of documents or ultimately claiming or choosing a reward. And then, of course, once fulfillment of that reward is done, is it what they expected? Are the funds on the card? Did it come undamaged if it's a piece of merchandise? Whatever that case might be, the systems and technology aren't going to answer all of those. Chatbots and other methods of handling those initial customer interactions are good to a point, but both the systems and all of us as executioners in this space need to recognize when the time comes that we need to insert ourselves into the process. Certainly, the more escalated matters need to be handed off to a human being at times so that there can be quick resolution and then provisioning of a solution for that customer that can be expedited to them. And so we do that up front through our call center operations stays involved throughout, whether it's on the back office side and doing validation work that needs to be done manually at times outside of what AI is doing through IDP, or if it's somewhere else post sale where the customer just has checking on the balance of a card as an example, or checking back on status of something that's been mailed to them. There are human people available for those questions and those interactions that need to occur. We also have to consider the demographics of different programs. We do work for a rebate program in the food and beverage space, and the demographic there is typically in an age range much higher than other rebate or reward programs. And so we understand the users may not be as digitally inclined and using those online capabilities. So they're going to expect that you have that available to them, whether it's a live agent at the end of the phone line or at least a chat discussion that can be with a live agent. So it's anticipating, identifying what those areas and those circumstances might be, and then you outline those in your solution to talk about it, all while trying to keep costs down and ensure that the brands you're servicing are getting the best value for their money. And there are ways to do that. And the bulk of what you handle these days can be done in a more automated fashion while delivering a great digital experience to a customer. But those exceptions need to have provisioning. And those are things you have to build into your solutions.
Yeah, it's no easy balance to strike, between automation and personalization. And, I had the opportunity to attend the Loyalty Summit in Chicago last week, which was great. And this was a topic that was coming up relative to AI and chatbots and customer service, as you're describing. Everyone was trying to figure out, well, what's the right way to navigate chatbot, right, from the brand side? Is it totally personalized and it's a human? Is it automated because that's maybe more efficient and can get faster answers? Is it automated to a point and then a human intervenes? So there's all these different options, and you're bringing up a really interesting point about multi-generational consideration, because once you crack the code and find that balance, that may work well for Gen Z, but then not work at all for, a baby boomer. So yeah, it's just yet another challenge, right? That's an exciting one to solve, of not just using the technology when it comes to AI, but figuring out the right ways to apply it for the right people.
Right. The other thing I'll say about customer service is it goes beyond just that participant, those user-facing interactions. It also goes to our clients, to the brands that we serve. Having dedicated support resources they can turn to for questions, for concerns, for escalated matters, it's really critical. And it's not just at an executive level. You've got to have resources that can pick up that phone or answer a phone, can provide immediate answers so that they're not looking for answers for too long in regards to questions that may come from their base. So if their customers are pushing things up through their environments, which is very likely if they purchased something originally through a customer service channel with the brand, they may go back that route to complain about their reward experience. So giving avenues to the brand to come back to you as the incentive marketing executioner is really important as a part of that solutioning, and something that we pride ourselves in doing, providing either designated or dedicated resources that they know they can count on.
Yeah, I want to spend some time, to talk about expectations, buyer expectations, that you bring up brands. Brands are obviously, because of everything that we're talking about today, looking at different criteria and getting a little bit more specific of what they look for. And ROI, is always a term that comes up, but I think every year it takes a little bit of a different form. It becomes more specific and more tactical. ROI can, tend to be a little bit of a lazy metric at times, right? How much money we put in,
Sure.
but how much came out. Part of the Grupo research that I saw that was really great was it got more tactical on the meanings and the drivers behind ROI, North Star metrics and KPI trees. And, again, I find that valuable because ROI can be rather ambiguous, and more important to look at the different drivers that create return. And then you can evaluate those and then take control of ROI instead of waiting to see, what did this do? You can control that along the way. So, if you could talk a little bit about your take on that and that research and how you think about ROI in 2026.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up and mentioning the North Star metrics, the KPI trees, really critical elements of how you measure the health of your incentive programs that you're managing for your clients, and then providing back what they demand now, which is data and insights that can help drive their strategies. So being a more strategic partner, I think, is definitely a part of the gig these days. If you bring solutions, you better also have ways of measuring and not just specifically ROI, but additional insights such as customer sentiments, understanding what the true feel of the program is within the marketplace, and whether it can be repeated or whether it needs to be adjusted for future versioning of that type of offer. It's making them more sustainable and dynamic so that they can flex and adjust programs accordingly. That comes from the insights and data that comes out of those programs. And it may be in the customer service channels where you're collecting sentiments and responses and reactions to things, or issues that have come up, some of that friction we talked about. Identifying and then reporting out on those pieces in a meaningful and useful way to our clients is really part of this, not only the research, but really the reality of our business these days. It's not enough just to say, hey, you saw a lift in sales, so promotion must have worked. Their decisions, both budgetarily and intrinsically, in terms of understanding if they're having the impact in the marketplace with their brand that they're looking for and trying to achieve, goes way beyond just whether or not they saw a lift in sales.
Yeah, and theoretically, they should see that lift coming by tracking all of the indicators, right? It's leading versus lagging. Sales lift and ROI, that comes later. But the
Yep.
earlier KPIs in the program, the participation rate, the redemption rate, repeat purchasing, if you're tracking all of that stuff, you can tell, what the outcome and what the lagging is going to be. And better, you can lean in where there's problem areas, and start to execute some strategies to get in front of those lagging results,
For sure.
and create it. So there should never be a surprise of running a report and saying, "Hey, how did this do?" With the data that's available, all the different data points in these programs, the ability to track, it's tracking it, understanding it, and then being able to lean in and affect it live and not after the fact.
You mentioned live. It really, that's the clients are demanding. They want it real time. They want not only dashboards and reports, but they want access to the data real time so they can see how things are progressing and performing right in front of them as it's in market. And especially in those initial days with newer promotions or incentives that get launched, they want to see that impact, how it's trending, whether they need to make adjustments to it. Some of it determines how long they're going to run a promotion or to what degree they're going to increase the dollars that they're budgeting and putting into that. So all those different factors. We watch the social media platforms for sentiments and responses and reactions. We do a lot of that as an additional follow-up to the brands to help them see the bigger picture of where the impacts are coming, because suddenly they're a little bit siloed sometimes in their planning for how this goes to market. It looks like everything's perfect, but once it hits, how is it doing in terms of competing with other brands, meeting all of your objectives, and again, bringing those customers back into your environment for future interactions or transactions.
Now, are there unique success drivers that you're seeing that are steering that today that's different than others, that maybe separates, a program that's underwhelming to a program that's doing great? Like what's bolstering the success in 2026?
Great question. We've worked with a lot of partners of ours, clients who've very traditionally kept the same type of promotion in market. And that lack of diversity and not having a more dynamic program available, we think is hurting at times. So the demand, and this is part of that shift in 2026 that we've seen coming and that we think is going to play into the future. It's customers demanding choice in the rewards. So when your promotion goes to market, don't just promise one thing. Promise multiple things that could be available to them to choose from that will fit their specific needs. That's certainly one thing that we think is driving and that we're seeing from the data that we're pulling back in the sentiments surveys and other things that we're doing. Obviously, security along with speed is still very, very prevalent and something that we're seeing more and more of, and people are voicing that very outwardly to us as the care channel, and we're feeding that back to our clients that we're either meeting or not meeting those demands, and we may need to make some adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, keeping things fresh is probably more important now than ever.
Yep.
We're in an age of digital overload. People are getting promotions from every which way for everything. So even at one point, a very attractive, offer or promotion or, incentive rules logic may not be that interesting, even the next quarter. I mean, I think the traditional long-standing, do this and get that promotions are starting to fade, and we are seeing people, lean more into keeping it fresh, running different types of styles, even to different people and different audiences, depending on their attributes. And I think it's imperative, but it's also much more complicated. It takes more technology, it takes more program management, and then it takes more, solutions like you guys offer to be able to keep all of that running and make it personal and targeted and keeping things fresh in that way.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think and understanding that as a provider allows you to build your solutions accordingly and ensure that that's what you're delivering. We're not living in that space that we once did. We have to stay dynamic and able to pivot solutions quickly, and giving the clients the levers they can pull quickly to do that is really what enables that diversity of offerings in market, keeping it fresh. It's not just simply hitting a button to reset and go. It's refreshing and then going. And we're finding that that's working very effectively.
Awesome. So, I want to wrap us up with three, specific, more rapid fire questions, and I'm sure it's going to overlap with some of what we talked about, today already, sure. And that's okay. They may even overlap with each other a little bit, But if you were to name, one capability that every incentive strategy needs to have in 2026, what would that be?
Wow, yeah, it's the list is long in terms of the things I think are necessary, but I'm gonna put on the security hat for just a moment
Yeah.
and say that security and fraud and compliance are areas that you have to have embedded within your solutions at all levels and through your entire supply chain. Without that, you really don't have a starting point because everything else you present from a technology standpoint, customer care, whatever it might be, has the potential to be meaningless. And again, it's going to cost you the business rather than just simply being a cost of. So finding ways to implement and dedicate resources, technology, processes, and partnerships that ensure that security, I think, should be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's
I,
a really reasonable pick because to your point, like we said earlier, if every single thing in the program was right and perfect and frictionless and all the trends and AI and all the things, but
yeah,
to the anecdote earlier, someone goes to use that payment and the funds are gone due to fraud or security oversight. That's it. None of
right.
that mattered. So
Yep.
so yeah, I think that is something everybody needs to keep in mind this year more so than the past. And maybe it's also security, but the biggest mistake you think companies will make in 2026, I think maybe overlooking, the security and how that could tie or sabotage loyalty. But
Yeah.
what else? Any mistakes that you think people or oversights that folks running programs will make this year?
I will tell you that the feedback we hear most often from prospects that we're doing new business with is oftentimes that lacking of end-to-end customer care. And again, I mentioned earlier, it's not just for the end users that are participating in the programs, it's for the stakeholders within the brand, it's sometimes with your partners. But that level of care and having the resources to do that, whether it's systematically or through the human touch point, I think is really critical. It is a differentiator in the space, we've heard. Those that have somebody that can answer the phone when somebody calls, whether it's the client themselves and one of their executives or stakeholders running the programs, or of course the customers. And if you can do that innovatively through use of AI and technology, all the power to you and certainly to us, because we should all be looking at those opportunities and options. But if you lose sense of customer care throughout the life cycle of a reward or incentive program, I think you're neglecting one of the most critical elements. And again, that's me putting on the customer care hat that I've worn for so many years, but I would certainly encourage all of us in this space to keep that very front of mind. And there are ways to do it more efficiently than ever with technology these days. So it shouldn't prevent us or taking some of the smaller or mid-sized programs and pushing them off to the side and not giving them quite as much attention. Well, attention is what customers are demanding these days. They want that upfront, they want it ongoing, and your clients want the same. So just keep that in mind as you execute your programs.
Yeah, it's great advice. And so, thinking ahead, and for context for those that might be listening in the future, we're in March of 2026. If we were to think ahead to 2028,
Mm-hmm.
what should those running programs start doing now to get ahead of what the trends will likely be, 2 years from now?
Perfect question. Perfect segue into probably what I would think is that maybe that third area that you talked about on my list that's really critical. It's creating sustainability of your solutions. And for the sake of the brands, the promotions or incentive marketing they're doing, you want that to be sustainable beyond a big splash they might make in market now. So you want the technology to be able to adapt to things if they're adding different choices of rewards or inserting loyalty elements. Again, embedding some of that up front, even if the initial interaction was a one and done. You want to create an environment that customers trust, that they come back to, because that builds on the brand and the loyalty there. So I think taking that into consideration now in 2026 and building solutions accordingly that have all the other elements we've talked about, fraud compliance, security, customer care, but then how is it dynamically going to evolve with that brand as their brand changes in market or their marketplace changes in terms of what their customers are demanding. We can anticipate those things because we've watched it evolve over the last 5 to 10 years in really incredible ways. And we've all been very responsive to that. And when we talk to partners and competitors, it's cool to see what's out there and what's available to people, meaning the brands. But I think it's incumbent upon us to not neglect that at any point, and now more than ever, create solutions that can adapt, evolve, and keep pace with what the demands of this industry are going to continue to be.
Awesome. Well, Paul, this is all great insight. Really appreciate you guys putting together this research, making it available for the industry. Appreciate you coming on, being a member of IMA and IESP. Where can we find this research? Where can we learn more about Grupo?
Well, we invite all comers to take a look at grupo.com. And if you want to look specifically for more insights on this research, please go to grupo.com/incentives. You'll find a button there that you can push to lead you right into our series of articles. That roadmap, again, we feel is a great playbook for any of us in this space to consider. But we'd love to continue the dialogue and the discussions at the various events upcoming so that we have a chance to network further and establish again that longer term credibility that we all want and need in this space. We're doing good work and we're doing it for good reasons. You all should be commended, certainly, that are listening to this now or in the future. But let's get excited about what that future can hold and continue to bring the very best to the clients that we serve.
Cool. Well, thanks for the work you guys are doing, and thanks for sharing your knowledge today, Paul. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time and for allowing me the opportunity.